Hi, and welcome to Entrepreneur Insight. I am your host, Angela Wolf. Today with me, I have Janet Prey, a good friend, entrepreneur, and someone that I admire in the industry. Welcome, everyone. It looks like, holy cow, we have over 100 people in here already. And my huge apologies for the technical issues. There's always something, I swear. But Janet, hi, you look great.
Hi, everybody.
Everyone say hi. If you haven't been on this platform before, we are live streaming on YouTube, but if you'd like to participate in the question and answer, you can leave comments to the right. I left a poll for you down below to ask if you're in business or not, and then there's questions and answers. So just scroll around, have a good time, and I'm going to interview Janet. I'm going to ask her a lot of the questions that you're asking, because I went through here. There are a lot of good questions, Janet. I don't know if you had a chance to peek at any of these, but
no, I haven't. Yeah,
they're great.
So,
Janet, thanks for being here. And how many years ago did you start your business?
Let's see. I'd say. Why am I echoing?
Looks like you lost your signal just a little bit, so hopefully you'll come back. Okay. I see you.
Yeah. Over 30 years. Over 30 years. So.
That's a long time.
33 years, yeah.
And as people heard yesterday, if they saw the brief interview, so I don't want to recap all of that because I'll leave a link to that, but what was the first business that you started with? Was it with your aunt, or did you start differently?
I started differently. I started when my children were really young, probably 1 and 2 years old, and I didn't want to leave the home. I didn't want to send the kids to daycare, so I wanted to do something that could bring some money in. So a friend was doing art fairs and craft bazaars and things, and she said, make some stuff and send it to me and I'll sell it for you. Well, the first item I sent her sold out the first weekend. Every weekend after, I was selling like a crazy person. So that's how I got started: craft fairs, art fairs, Renaissance festivals, things like that.
Well, you know, it's kind of funny you say that, because that's one of the big trends right now, are these Etsy art fairs and things like that. I kind of consider it the same. I used to go to a lot of those as well, but not on the same scale as you did. I just tried to go to those in college to make a little money, and didn't work out so well. Because one time I brought a pair of earrings I made, and they were all out of that. Remember that plastic that you could melt?
Oh, shrinky dink stuff, yes.
So I made all these earrings and left them in the car, and it was sunny, and it melted to my front seat. So all I had was like a whole pile of plastic. Well, now they probably call that art, but at that time, all the money I had spent, I was all ready for this sale on Saturdays. So yeah, that didn't work out so well for me. But but it's interesting that you say that, because those art fairs, I consider them like Etsy fairs now. Have you been to any of these new Etsy events?
No, I've been to the Renegade craft fairs when they first came out a few years ago. And they were interesting, but a little bit different than what I was used to. What I did was, during my tenure, which is 25 years ago, it was art fairs or craft fairs. And what I learned really quick was I didn't want to do craft fairs. What happened at craft fairs, you have to have a low-end item. And so if you come in with your high-end items, people just walk by you. Like I said, I had custom-made garments that were hand-painted and hand-dyed, and I'm set up next to a person making toilet paper covers. You know, they're little crochet toilet paper covers. And so it wasn't the same customer or the same mindset. So I learned really quick that was one of the reasons I didn't want to do them. And if I brought in a lower-end item, something really quick and easy to make, which I did one year, and it sold like hotcakes, I come back to the same craft fairs the next year, and every other vendor had copied me.
Interesting.
And here's the worst part. I went up to the one vendor, and I wasn't rude about it or anything. I just sort of looked at her item, and I looked at the price, and I said, I can't imagine how you can sell this for this price. I said, I've searched everywhere, done all my research, and I can't make it for what you're selling it for. And she looked at me very sweetly and said, that's okay, honey. I'm retired and I don't need to make any money. I'm just doing this for something to do.
Oh,
When I realized, well, I can't compete against that. And
right.
I need to make money. And I wasn't doing it just to have something to do. So that's when
Yeah.
I learned to up my game.
And that's a tough one because not everybody wants to go into business. Some people do sewing and crafting or anything in the maker space as their hobby. So it takes a very unique person that wants, and a go-getter, a mover and a shaker like yourself, to go and actually make money in the industry. So after that, what would you say was the next, when you decided that, okay, that's not my route? What did you end up doing then?
After art fairs and craft fairs, well, I ended up landing on Renaissance festivals for about 20 years. I did Renaissance festivals, and they were a guaranteed profit maker every time for me. And it was a great combination of that perfect storm. It was the right place with the right product and the right customer at the right time. After 20 years, the Renaissance festivals changed drastically. When we first started, and I'm talking in the early 80s, you were juried in and you had to not only make everything you sold, you had to prove that you made it.
Oh, really?
Yes. And at one point I got called, I had to go in and prove that I made something because they thought it was so well made that I must be buying it ready made. Which was, and I felt insulted and complimented at the same time.
Right.
But then after 20 years or so, the interest in starting up that type of business started to wane. And the younger artists that were coming along didn't want to go to the trouble. And Renaissance festivals had built themselves up so big that to have a space cost you $10,000 to $20,000.
Wow.
Because you had to have a building, and once they were built up, you had to buy an existing building. Where when I got to start, when they were right at their beginning, we could start with a tent, and then we could have just a simple structure, and then had to keep adding on to it as years went by. But after 20 years, the bottom really fell out of the profit because then they started bringing in imports. And now when you go to a Renaissance festival, there's a very small portion that's handmade. The rest of it's all imports.
I saw a question pop up that someone asked, what is a Renaissance fair?
Well, they're all over the country, and they're run by different people, but it's a big event where people celebrate the Renaissance period. And I use that term loosely because you see everything out there in costume. People come in costume, but it's not necessary. There's shows and entertainment and foods and things that are somewhat of that time period. But then you'll be walking down the streets and you feel like you're in merry old England, and then all of a sudden you walk into a Star Trek character.
So is that the same as cosplay, the cosplay events now that I hear so much about?
Well, they kind of, yeah, it's the same kind of customer. Now, some people will come to the Renaissance Festival just to enjoy the games and the food and maybe buy some crafts. But other people come to absorb the atmosphere and to come in costume and maybe talk in dialect and just escape. Those are your cosplay people. Cosplay means playing with costume, putting costumes on and having just fun and getting outside of yourself and maybe even taking on a whole new character. So it's maybe that's kind of where cosplay was born in a way.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, if more questions come up, I'll ask you on that, but that's interesting. So, okay, after that, you did those fairs, but there's a few more things in your business that I want to hit. We talked a little bit yesterday about your aunt from Islander Sewing, how she started it, but you've taken that business to a whole different level between your classes on Craftsy, which are incredible. I saw a lot of comments in here. I don't know if you saw these. Some of the girls said that they absolutely love your classes. They said that both of us were their favorites. Thank you. But the way you teach it is so good, but you've taken what she started to a whole nother level and brought it to our current time. Would you agree with that?
Yes. And and for those that don't know what we're talking about, the Islander sewing systems, it is based on how people sew in a garment factory. But between my aunt and now myself, we've created a process to teach the home sewer. So in the garment factory, a woman sits down or a man sits down and he puts in 79 sleeves an hour, and that's all he ever does, but he gets very efficient at it. So what we did was we took those efficiencies and brought them to the home sewer, who's not going to put 79 sleeves in an hour. So there's a little nuance in developing that for the consumer, but she can use those same techniques and sew almost as quickly. You know, a factory sewing machine sew at 5,000 stitches a minute. Your home sewing machine sews at about 850 stitches a minute. So you're not going to go at the same speed, but you can eliminate a lot of the fussy stuff that you think is necessary, you were taught is necessary, but when you take a class from myself or when my aunt was teaching, you find out that was actually counterproductive, some of it.
Well, and you know, what I found interesting, and we mentioned this yesterday as well, that I didn't learn from you. I wish I would have. It would have saved a ton of time of headaches. But I did that just because of doing the process over and over and over, and I found ways that were faster. And so I always thought maybe I'm not doing it right because that's not what the patterns say. But to be honest with you, when I finally saw what I think I won your book, the book, one of the first years of the Passion for Fashion contest, you gave that, which was a huge generous. And I'm going through this and I'm like, either I'm doing it right or we're both doing it wrong. I don't know which. But
yeah, there's really no wrong way to do it. It's the end result that we're all looking for. So if you want to baste up your seam, pin your zipper in, then hand baste it in, take out all your pins and machine stitch it very carefully, and you get an excellent zipper. Nothing wrong with that. Right. I don't baste, I don't pin, I slap the zipper down on the machine, put the fabric on top of it, and sew the zipper. I did a little video last week on that. It's on my Facebook page. So I come up with as excellent a zipper as anybody, but in a very small fraction of the time. So that's the difference. We're not cutting corners to say we don't care if it's exactly perfect or if it's really excellent. I always tell my students thrive for excellence, not perfection, because perfection is really elusive. So strive for excellence, and I always do. And when people will say to me, well, I just don't think you can do that without pins or basting, I say, look at the rack of clothes, and I'll have 100 garments on the rack, and we didn't put a pin in one of them. And then they start to think, maybe there's something here to look at. Yeah.
And it is, speaking of speed, that's part of, let's go into that part of being an entrepreneur.
Okay.
With all of the different businesses that you have, and I still want to touch on a few of those, let's talk about time for a minute. Where I was at the same point where sewing had to be fast. I say in my book, I wrote the need for speed because you have so much to get done. The designing is awesome. The grabbing fabrics is awesome. The sewing, I'm like, just get it done. But it had to be fast, but it had to be quality too. So you have that in your business. And I know people have asked me this many times, as a sewer, as an entrepreneur, how much of your time is actually sewing? And this would be a similar question to the fashion designers out there, like ourselves. We're both pattern designers, fashion designers. How much time do we actually spend designing? So I'm going to ask you both those. How much time do you spend sewing and how much time do you spend designing? Which they're probably intermingled a bit, because I think the perception is that when you're a fashion designer, you spend your whole day sketching and grabbing fabrics and then sewing up cute things. And I mean, I'm not going to answer. I'll answer when you're finished. But I mean, mine was so minute, so I want to know what for you. What is your average?
You can design a garment in your head in minutes. You're ready. That's exciting. But then you got to draft the pattern, and that takes some time. Then you have to test the pattern, and that'll take a little more time. And then after that, then you grade it into several sizes. And then in my company, one thing you can always be assured of is that those patterns are tested many, many times. And so then we're going to test, if not all the sizes, several of the sizes to make sure there isn't any hiccups. You know, pattern drafting is an art and a science. And if you do it right, it's going to come out right. But it's very easy to get confused and make the slightest little 1/4 inch mistake or off an 1/8 here and add that to the 1/4 over there, and pretty soon you're off by 1 inch. So there's lots of little hiccups you've always got to keep testing. As far as sewing, I make the first probably 3 items, or I have an assistant who also helps me. So as we're testing it, we make the first 3 or 4, and then the sample garments are either for the pattern cover or either made by us or someone else. Right now we're doing all of it. Again, at one point we had some outside testers that we worked with, but we've gotten it streamlined now. And why spend time and money that you don't have to? So as you work at something, the longer you work at it, the better you get. And that's when you can start tightening up the budget and spending less money on development and maybe more money on marketing.
And that's a big thing. For those that are looking at starting an independent pattern company, it's very popular now. Some, I haven't tested a lot, but we've tested quite a few with IPCA back then. Or you did, actually. When I became a member, I don't remember. No, you didn't test mine. Thank heaven. No, I'm just teasing.
We did. You didn't get involved.
Kathleen tested mine. And so, and that was really good to know, because I was able to get feedback on certain things, like even the size of your booklet. I wanted the big, the huge thing, but our store is going to really carry that. That was such an important aspect to thinking, I never thought about that. I just wanted the big picture. And you know what? I thought, well, I don't know if I'll be in stores because I'm just going to be an independent selling online. Well, funny how things change. Now I am in stores, and I think they're appreciating what you said about that. That's just one example of, collaborating on different projects.
You bring up a good point, because when you start a new business, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So you don't even know always the right questions to ask. So when I do some consulting with somebody who wants to start a business, whatever kind of sewing business they want to start, the first thing I tell them is to go interview 3 people. And that's what you had the benefit of being in IPCA. It was more informal, but you interview 3 people who are doing exactly what you want to do. And you have a list of 10, 15 questions. Where should I start? What's the pitfall I should avoid? What is the best thing you ever did that made your business successful? Ask those kind of questions. Find out the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then I've had people who've done that and said, oh, I figured out I don't want to do that. I found out there was too much ugly that won't fit into my life. So I at least learned not to even, go in that direction, maybe go in a little different direction. Maybe I don't want to manufacture, but I want to teach sewing or something like that. So definitely need to do your homework. And then another thing that brought to mind is people will come to me about pricing their patterns. And they would say to me, oh, I think I'm going to sell my patterns for $9.95. And these are paper patterns, not PDFs, paper patterns. And I say to them, well, that's pretty inexpensive. Are you sure you're getting your profit back? Well, I think that's what the public wants. Well, first of all, you don't know what the public wants. You don't have a crystal ball. Secondly, I say to them, now what if your patterns are popular? How are you going to sell them wholesale? Now you have to sell that pattern for $4.50. And hey, then what happens when Nancy's Notions comes along, and you're selling to Nancy's now, I've sold to Nancy's for years. Now they want what's called distributor pricing. That's not 50%. It's 50% minus another 30% off of the 50. So now you're selling your pattern for $3 or $2.50. Well, it's costing you more than that to make it. So now you've cut yourself out of a huge revenue stream that could we all know, Angie, you know this. You can sell one pattern at a time, you send them out. But when you get that email from Nancy's Notions that says, we want 144 of this one and 72 of that one, well, that's just exciting, because all you had to do is stick them in a box and you've made this huge sale all at once with very little effort.
Yeah.
So you want to always consider how far down you're going to go. If you're going to end up in that wholesale or distributor stream, you got to think about that pricing to begin with.
That is true. And I think one mistake that I watch a lot of new entrepreneurs do, especially, it doesn't, not necessarily with the pattern designing, but in any of the things, that they constitute the cost of the item. So if it's the cost of the booklet, the cost of the pattern, or for a garment, the cost of the fabric, the cost of, the materials that go in it. They give themselves such little cost for their time. Not to mention that, I mean, some people start at home. I started working from my home, and then I bought a house and turned the whole house into work. I mean, I said the kitchen cabinets make great fabric storage because that's not where I put food. So but then I'm in an office now, and I have to pay for this. Somebody, you have electric, you have those things. And I think when people get started, they really should sit down and have a business plan. They don't have to have a major in business to do that. But I remember when I wrote my book, I thought, oh, this is the worst section ever. And then after I finished the section, I thought, I'm rewriting my business plan. What was that? You really should rewrite it every 3 to 5 years because things change. But you have to make accountability for your time, number one, because you're not free usually. You try not to be, at least. And you also need to make for your space, wherever it is. If it's at home, if you still have electric, you have machines to buy, servicing, those things. I think that kind of just falls through the cracks. Do you have any piece of wisdom for anyone on that?
Absolutely. You and I have a contemporary, and I always cringe every time I hear her say this when we're having a business conversation. She goes, I'm free to me. So in other words, she doesn't give herself any kind of value to what she's putting into developing the product or selling the product. She just keeps saying, I'm free to me. Well, no, you're not. And here's the thing, when I started making garments and selling them, I was my seamstress, and I made dozens and dozens until I couldn't make enough to satisfy the interest. So then I had to start hiring seamstresses. Well, now I got to pay them. Right. And I wasn't counting into my original price structure the cost of the labor, even though it's me. Then now how can I go out and get a seamstress to make it, because now I've just cost myself more for that item. So here's a really good rule of thumb that I learned to go by, and it was learned by the road of hard knocks, but basically is you take the cost of your raw materials that goes into your garment. So it's fabric, thread, button, zippers, whatever. And don't even think about the electricity. I've got people that say, well, how much do I put in for electricity? Oh, for heaven's sakes. No. That's cost of doing business. Put that aside. This is just to price the one item. So now we've got all of our raw goods. Now we have to figure out how long does it take to make that? And in that amount of time, how much does that seamstress, and a seamstress should get a reasonable wage. So what are we going to figure? That she should get $20, $25 an hour. So if it takes a half an hour to make it, we got to pay her $12 for it. So if it costs me $12 for the raw materials and $12 for the labor, I've got $24 into that. I should sell it for 4 times that price, which is $96. And here's the question you're asking right now. I know you are, people. You're saying, but what if I can't get that price? What if people won't pay that price? Then you don't make it. You go back to the drawing board and come up until you find a plan where it's all going to work. Sometimes you've got to go source out a better price on your fabric, or maybe you've got to figure out a more streamlined way to put it together, or maybe you have to take one of the processes off the garment. So maybe you're putting in too much detail. Maybe you've got to trim that. This happens every day in the real world of garment factories. Every day. They've got to go in and they've got to figure out, well, I can't use those pearl buttons. I've got to use plastic because I have to save 50 cents a garment or I'm not going to make any money.
And that does make a big difference. And the ×4 is a really easy way to do that, because I hear that as much as you do when someone says, this really is in the alteration business as well. I can't charge what you said I should charge because they won't pay it where I live. Well, then who are they going to pay to do it? If you are an expert in your field, I mean, I remember sitting on the airplane next to a really nice guy, and we were coming here. He would go to the PGA. He said, you want tickets to the PGA? I said, sure. He said, so what do you do? And I didn't say much. And then I get off the plane, and he had Googled me. And so he said, so you sew? Yeah, I sew. He says, I have this button. And I said, I have a show on YouTube. You can watch it and do it. And so then I've used that story because when someone says they won't pay for it, but if they don't know how to do it, they're going to have to pay someone. And if you're good, then they're going to pay you. I don't mean you have to be exorbitant. I mean, I did custom couture, very high-end. Was this the market for it? I don't know, but it worked.
Well, here's the thing. You, as a custom sewer, you only need to have, and you already know this because you did it. I only consult about it. I didn't have the sensibility for doing custom. But what you need is a really nice handful of active customers that have the wherewithal to pay what you need to charge. And when people say to me, well, in my neighborhood, they won't pay that price. Well, maybe you're living in a blue collar neighborhood and those people cannot afford it, but they'd love to have it. But do they walk into the car dealership and say, I can only afford a Chevy, but I really want a Cadillac? So how about doing me a good deal? I mean, It's not. So it's the same thing. So I always tell my students, go to the neighborhood. You know the neighborhood where you live. I live in southeastern Michigan. I know the neighborhood. It's Birmingham, West Bloomfield, Bloomfield Hills. That's the area where people make large six-figure incomes. That's the place where women go to a lot of activities and they're used to spending large amounts, and they'll pay that money to have that garment look its best or be the most unique at that particular event. So It's not about doing your next door neighbor a favor. If you want to do them a favor, that's great, but that's not business.
Right.
Don't do it as a rule. I don't do it. When people say to me, well, what if, my sister-in-law wants me to make her kid's christening gown or whatever, a relative wants a wedding dress. I say, either say no or do it for free. Because when you get into that, you know how that is. You get into that and it just goes crazy. So you don't want to have a ruined relationship with a friend or a relative. So if you want to do them the favor, do it and say, oh, I'll do that as the gift. But don't go cutting your prices down, because in the end, you're not going to be happy. They're not going to be happy. And it just ends up sour.
It really does. Janet, can you see? I have Marcia here on the screen. Can you see her?
Yeah. Hi, Marcia.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good.
Thanks for joining us. I wasn't sure if you'd be able to log in. I'm just going to test this, and I was scrolling through some of the questions, and she had such good questions. So thanks for coming live, and you can ask Janet yourself instead of me having to read your question.
Go ahead.
Actually, my project I'm working on right now is at Jacket Express. I'm so excited. I just started, so we'll see how it turns out.
Yes.
I would like to start a sewing business, and it's just so overwhelming, so many things to think about. I was just wondering, what would be the first thing to start with? I know you need a business plan and things like that, but sewing clothes for yourself and showing it to people, sewing for other people, just to get your stuff out. Like, where do I start?
Okay, so the type of sewing business you want to start is custom clothing?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so you want to sew for the individual, comes to you and says, I need a cocktail dress and I want it to be pink and I'd like it strapless or whatever. Angela's the person to answer that question. I never did that. I told people would come into my shops at the Renaissance Festival and they'd say, and they'd come up to me, I have a question for you. I go, okay. And they go, if I bought the fabric, no. But no. It was always no. I don't do custom. If you like what I have on the rack, buy it. If you want it altered, you take it to your local alteration specialist. Because that's just, I know who I am. I could not have dealt with the mother of the bride crying in my studio going, but I want the hem a quarter inch shorter. But I just let it down a half inch. I know, but I want it. No, we would have had a real problem.
I sewed all the bridesmaid dresses for my daughter's wedding a couple years ago.
Oh, goodness.
That was a lot of fun, but nerve-wracking, and I was the mother of the bride.
Oh.
So, I would test the waters. You've already done the bridesmaids dresses, but you did that as a labor of love, I'm sure. So I would test the waters to see if that's going to work for you. I know Angie did it for a number of years, but Angie has the sweetest disposition in the world, and she can just always have this beautiful smile on her face. That's not me. So she can do it. So if you can always have that beautiful smile on your face and not let anything ruffle your feathers, Angie could probably give you some good advice.
Marcia, you have my book, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Home-based fashion design business. That is basically a biography of my business. And that was, I would say 80% of that book was focused on custom apparel. And I think one of the biggest things besides the business plan, things like that, is to really, what Janet said about pricing, come up with pricing. Because even with custom apparel, you'll have people that they'll bring you the fabric, like Janet just said, and they don't know, well, I'm not going to make a whole huge assumption here. The majority of the people that are having you sew the garments don't know much about fabric except what feels good, what looks good. A silk charmeuse, and they bring you a polyester charmeuse. We're talking that there isn't enough Advil in the world to make that problem beautiful, and that's why I smile. Because I just said no. No, I'm sorry, hon, let me pick it out for you. So if you're going to go into custom, two things: practice with different fabrics, have samples around for customers, build confidence in what you're doing, and have the confidence that when somebody comes in and says, I want you to make this, and you know that the style isn't going to look good on them, or you know a woman's gut instinct is the best thing that we've ever had in our lives. Because I can think of every horror story I have, which there aren't many, but the ones that are like stuck in your head forever, like, oh my gosh, that outfit turned out awful, or why did I do that? I guarantee you I had the gut instinct at some point to say, don't do it. Would you say that, Janet?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and the other thing that I would say is what I had said earlier, interview. Now you've got a chance to talk to Angela and you've got Angela's book. Go interview 2 more custom sewers. Mm-hmm. Somebody who's been at it for 10 or 12 years. There's a lot of them in a group called the Association of Sewing and Design Professionals. And you can find them online, and they're a national organization, and they have a discussion board where they share their horror stories and their happy moments and help each other, support each other with what would you do in this case kind of scenarios. So I've seen some stories on there that made me think, I am so glad I did not do that. The woman with the broken finger and the police at her house and the stolen wedding dress. Like, oh my God. So those would be good people to ask. There's some really good people on there.
And that is a great organization. They have their fall event coming up. You received their Lifetime Achievement Award, Janet.
Yes, I did.
You're a little young for that, but
I thought, when I got off the phone, I was in Vegas, I think with you, and we're doing a fashion show in Las Vegas at a trade show, and I get this phone call and they say, Janet, we want you to know you're the winner of the Lifetime Achievement Award. And I'm saying thank you. In the back of my head does that mean I'm officially old?
Well, it's an honor. And actually, I was one of the ones that nominated you, yes. So because I couldn't resist. So, but that organization, they have an event in the fall, Marcia, and I think it's in October in Orlando this year. I'm not able to attend this year, but it is such a great place to meet people and brainstorm. It's worth every penny to go. In fact, the first 2 events that I went to were in Chicago, the Chicago area, and I could hardly wait to get back for the second year because you met so many people that do what you do, and they would say something like, I never know what to charge for this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's somebody else that has that. Or we talk about different situations. In fact, there was 4 of us that sat in a room one time and compared what we charged an hour, and we were just shocked. Somebody was at 70, somebody was at 10. That's a big wide range for 4 people that do the exact same thing. So you would like that organization. So, also, and you can always message me.
Yeah. And consider alterations. I know some people hate them. I know Angie did them. We've got Robin Bolton's doing a great business out in Oregon, and she used to live in Illinois. She's a member of ASDP, and she moved all the way to Oregon and had to restart her business. But she's got like one dry cleaner that collects all the alterations and drops them off. And then she just, there are so many places in this country that are begging for somebody who can do decent alterations. I wouldn't go to work at Davis Bridal because they don't pay well and they work you like a dog. I had someone work for me that did that. But doing alterations on your own, if you're looking to make some money, there's money to be made in there because nobody has a sewing machine that doesn't sew anymore, and half of them don't know how to put a zipper in, or their machine won't hem a pair of jeans. When I was in college, I made a lot of money doing alterations.
Okay.
What you just said is so right, Janet. It's a good cash flow. And when I said I hated it, I didn't really hate it. Everyone asked me to do them, and I was like, I used to use that phrase that everyone says, that's like asking Picasso to paint your bathroom. Yeah. But it was good cash flow. You can get something finished in 10 minutes or an hour and get it out. And the pickup and delivery was great if you didn't want people at your house or at your office. I mean, there's so many options, and the cash flow was really good. And cash flow is key when you have your own business. If you don't have cash, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble if you pay bills.
And you might turn some of those customers into doing some custom work for them. Once they see what a fabulous job you did with alterations, you make sure you have your business card that says, I'm sure yours did, Angie, alterations and custom sewing. So you make sure that they know this isn't the only thing I do. And if they happen to come to your place to pick something up, you make sure you have some beautiful gowns and things hanging up that they can't miss when they walk in to pick up their altered jeans or skirt or whatever. And then it can start the conversation.
Okay. And that's a big thing, is to have the garments hanging there. I used to have my house look like I had dress forms everywhere. When my husband and I got married, I said, you move into my house. He's like, where am I going to fit? So that didn't work out so well. We got a different house. But I had dress forms everywhere. So when people would come in, even if it was for a simple garment, they could see all of the other garments and they'd say, oh, I want one of that. It's everybody wants, a little bit of that. So
yeah,
I'm inviting a few other people on, so you're more than welcome to come on. You can, they're asking questions. So I also see that, hi, Vanessa. Vanessa's on here from Crafty Gemini. She's a great entrepreneur herself. So a lot of people are commenting and asking you questions.
Okay.
One more quick question. It's okay to say no to people, right? Like I've had quite a few people say, oh, I want you to make this, but I want you to make it exactly like this company's item.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. If I want to make something, I'll make it similar, but with a different twist, because if I'm making some other company's item, it's not original. It's not.
You don't feel good about it. And yeah, just practice your no speech. You've got to come up with a way of saying no that is nice, gentle, but leaves no option for debate. You don't say, well, I'd really rather not do that, because that means you might do it. Or I don't have time for that this week. Oh, then you'll do it next week. So you want to make sure your no is a definite no, but you do it in your own nice way to do it.
Okay, thank you.
One thing for you on the no thing is, if they bring you something to copy exactly, you can use the excuse, although you can't copyright your designs, but you can use the excuse that you don't copy other designers. That's just not your philosophy. And that's what I used to say. They would bring me a garment that they would say, I want this exactly the same. And I would cringe like you're cringing. And number one, it cuts off your creative freedom anyways if you're copying somebody's design. And then if it's different by one iota, they'll use that as an excuse. So I just say, no, I don't copy other designers. I can make you something similar, but I would like to make these changes. I think they'd look better on you. Something like that.
That's perfect. That's a perfect way to segue into it, Angie. I like that idea.
Yeah. So thanks, Marcia. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great to see you. Okay, I have another couple questions for you here, Janet. Diane Fetters, where did this go? It was a great question. How do you keep a balance between your personal life and the demands of your business?
Well, you have to eliminate some things on both sides. So what I tell people, if they're going to start a business, they need to make sure that their lifestyle, that business will fit into it, which means basically if you're married, that your husband's on board with, especially in a startup business, you're going to spend a whole lot more time, personal time in the first couple of years, maybe, than you will later on once you get your feet on the ground and maybe are able to hire some help. But in the beginning, you've got to make sure that those people in your life will accept that. I can remember when I started and someone would call me up. I remember my dad called me up. He wanted me to go to the West Coast with my mother for a trip. And I said, I can't, Dad. I've got way too much work to do. I've got all this production. I'm designing a new line, blah, blah, blah. He said, okay. And he called me back an hour later and he said, okay, well, your sister's going to go with her, so you can watch her kids, right? Really? Really? I just told you I had to work, but I'm working from home, so, oh, you must be, free to watch kids at the same time.
I'm not sure how well that would work out. There are a lot of things in the sewing room that don't work out so well with that whole scenario.
Oh yeah, and I mentioned my sister's kids were boys and they were super active too. It's like you couldn't take your eyes off them for a second, let alone get any.
Oh, that's cute. So Diane, I hope we answered that. We were talking about this a little bit yesterday, so if you didn't see that video, check that one out, because we both talked about how both of us are very fortunate in our lives that our families completely support us. My brothers and sisters, my mom, my dad, my grandparents before they passed away. My husband is, he's the best. He's the best husband for me. We're perfect for each other.
He's one of the best.
Yeah, because yours is the best too, by the way. But he's just very fortunate. And regardless of who is the entrepreneur in the family, maybe there's two sometimes, like in my case, you have to be able to step back and give each other their room. At the same time, know that even though your life is the most important and you might have work to hear that you have to get out on deadlines, that you still have to step back and breathe. To separate my work, I think I've told you this before, Janet, but when my husband and I got married, I moved my office out of my house for the first time in 7 years. I rented a small office space in a building he owned, so I wasn't paying much for rent, but it was a change to have to drive to work. Now, it's only 5 miles, so it's not like I just sit in rush hour or anything, but it was different, and I loved it. So when I came home at usually never 5 o'clock, when you're an entrepreneur, there is no such thing as 8 to 5. I read that 4-hour work week, which I love. And yes, majority of my business is done in 4 hours a day. But when you're an entrepreneur, you never shut it off. You never shut it off. I could be up at 10 o'clock at night looking for more designs. But that sewing machine out of my house, I was able to tell customers, I can't help you. They'd show up and want things pinned, but I didn't have a sewing machine there. So they had to make an appointment, which made things more regimented than just stopping by. And the other thing is, when I got home, I was done. Sewing was my main business at that point, the custom clothing. So I couldn't sew at home. So at night, I had to visit with my husband. And a friend of mine said this to me once, and this was probably one of the wisest things I've heard. And she said, well, asked what I was doing. I said, oh my gosh, I'll be working like all weekend, next week. And she's like, you're always like this. She goes, do you have time to sit and read a magazine? And I thought of that stack that I just got in the mail for the last 3 months that I haven't looked at yet. That I haven't had time yet. She goes, if you don't have time to read a magazine and relax for 1 hour a week, you're doing something wrong. And I thought, you know what? You're right. So that's my tip. If your stack of magazines get too high because you don't have time to sit and relax for 1 hour a week, but even a 1 hour in the evening or something with your family, if you don't give them that time, you're going to lose them anyways, because you're not even part of the family anymore. You have to balance it. That's probably the hardest thing, I think.
And I think everybody has to find their own balance. And like I said yesterday, one of the things that I'm fortunate enough to have is a husband who likes to do laundry and housework, and he does the dishes every day. I'm sure there are plenty of people who've been in my house think I've never done a dish in my life because they always see him doing them. But that was key for me, because him taking a lot of that housework, which is traditionally the woman's role, taking that off, it allowed me to be more active. But I do the same thing now. I didn't when the kids were younger, because I had to spend part of my day not working, taking care of kids. So then evenings were my time to work. But now in the evening, I try to be done by dinner time. I will sneak back out to the studio for an hour here and there. But basically, I try to spend the evening with my family.
Yeah, I do too. And the weekends, I try really hard. For now that when your business is out of the house, for sewing, if I have a sewing project I have to get finished, I really get annoyed when I have to go to the office on a Saturday. I can work from home on my computer and do all those things, but if I have to go to the office to sew, I'm not happy. So I've learned to restructure my week so I don't have to do that.
And I think everybody finds their own space, and you have to keep searching for it. You try something, and then you move it here or there to suit your family, your personality, your lifestyle. So there's not a specific steadfast model.
I agree. All right, I got a few more questions on here for you. I invited someone else on if she decides to join. A lot of people, if they don't have the setup, they can't join. But oh, there's a few things. I'm new to this. Okay, here's one from Cynthia Goren. This is interesting. I have training in alterations, tailoring, pattern making, your basic sewing skills. I have small alteration and dressmaking business and an Etsy shop. We were just talking about Etsy. After watching Angela teach a class in Houston recently, I think I might enjoy teaching local classes. I also want to develop my own girls pattern. I just don't know where to start with either. Where would my time be best spent, and what would be most profitable? Perhaps I'm trying to chase too many rabbits. Any advice? Cynthia, that's well, that is two big rabbits. They're two totally different.
At one time, you want to have one established before the other. And one of the things that you need to know about teaching sewing, and I think this is huge, this is people take notes. I have met so many people who decided they wanted to teach sewing and they wanted to be the sewing superstar. Yeah. And after a year or two of doing everything they could think of, they still weren't making it. Why weren't they making it? They weren't making it because you don't make it as a sewing superstar teacher, period. Nobody's done that. If you look at some of the higher profile teachers, Nancy Zeman, she had a TV show and she had a huge line of notions. You know, you go through all of those people. There has to be product. It doesn't have to be, but if you want it to really be profitable, I would develop my product line before I started teaching. So then after you get done teaching a class, you also have support materials and products that those students are going to be interested in, because maybe they came to you to learn how to make those girls patterns. And so now you have more girls patterns that they could purchase and take home. So you've got to think about it in a full circle business, not just a teacher. Unless all you want to do is teach and you love to teach sewing and you want to do it at the community college and it's for a little bit of spare change, because that's all it's going to be. It's not going to be, you're not going to go out there and make a fortune teaching local sewing classes.
And it takes a while to gather. Once you start teaching, if the students like you, then you're good. You can keep teaching. And you can change your aspects of teaching. And there might be something you do that you don't like or you don't, like for here. But it doesn't mean that every avenue is your place to teach. There's quilting. There's garment sewing. There's like such a huge embroidery. So many different things. And if you pick a specialty, I think that's one of the things. I think you should know a little bit about a lot, but pick a specialty in one or two areas that someone says, like if I think of who's my garment sewer in the industry as far as fast, I think of Janet immediately. I think of you for many other things, but that's just one example. You want to embroider, who are you going to call? I mean, like, be one of those people that it might start just local or on Facebook or social media, but then you can expand that.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, you and interview those people, like I said before. Interview somebody who's got a pattern line, or a couple of people, 3 people. Interview somebody who's teaching. You're going to learn so much, because most people are willing to share those 10 or 15 questions. There are some that will not be willing to share sources. Or there are some that will hold back and not give you the whole picture. I'm not like that, and neither is Angie. We're willing to share whatever we can that will help you. I had mentors who helped me, not only Margaret Islander, but some of you may have known of Clotilda Lampe, who had a catalog called Clotilda's for years. She was a mentor to me without me even having to ask her. When she saw I needed help, she was right there and gave me so much advice that saved me money or helped me make money, just from just from the fact that she had far more experience than I did.
Right. I met her once. I had the opportunity of meeting her once, and I didn't know who she was at the time. I just went to a sewing fair with my younger sister. We both got food poisoning and never went back to another sewing fair until I went to yours. All right. We have a little bit more time here since we started late, but I see a couple really good questions popping up here. Here's one that is interesting, because this really has to do with being in business. this is from Sharon. With creating a new business out of my love of sewing this year, what is the best or easiest form of keeping the books? And I'm putting this in your hands because that is my least favorite part of the business, is keeping the books. I absolutely detest taxes. I do them, of course. You have to do them, but I hate doing books. So what's your...
I don't do books either.
Oh.
But I live by them. So here's the thing. And I took a class in college, was an entrepreneur class. And I remember that entrepreneur professor to this day, what he said. I couldn't tell you what he looked like or his name, but I can tell you almost everything he ever said because it all came back to fruition as I went into business for myself. But you want an accountant that can do your books. And you don't need somebody that you're spending $500 a month on. They could probably come in once a month, or you could go to them and they'll just get everything all straightened out, and they'll give you some tips on how to keep it straight in the meantime. I think QuickBooks is your best bet to get started. If you write all of your checks out of QuickBooks and absolutely have only a business account, do not mingle your, I could go on forever about don't mingle your family funds with your business funds. Keep it separate. Keep it separate to keep your marriage intact. Keep it separate to stay sane, and keep it separate so that you know if you are making money or not. You can take a look at that. But here's the thing about hiring a bookkeeper. I've had more people come to me and they say, I'm starting a business. And I don't even be a sewing business. I go, okay, well, you need a good bookkeeper. Oh yeah, the next door neighbor is going to do it. Really, what's his qualifications? Well, he works for Boeing. He's the last guy you want. The guy who works for Boeing is dealing with huge corporate issues, things that have nothing to do with a mom and pop or a small home-based business. You want an accountant who is working with other home-based or small businesses in your area. And I'll tell you again, where I heard that professor, I'm like, I wanted to thank him if I could have remembered his name, when my accountant one day saved me $1,000 in 2 minutes. And it was when she looked at what I was paying for my homeowner's insurance, which included my office. She said, oh, you're paying way too much. The guy down the street pays almost $1,200 less than you do. I said, wow. And I made a phone call and I got a bid and I changed insurance companies that very day.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So, and those people have all kinds of those because they see it in other people's businesses. Now, I've had bookkeepers who, they didn't care about your business. All they did is made sure that it balanced. That's the only thing they cared about is if it balanced. But the bookkeeper I finally settled on, she would come to me, Janet, we have to talk. There's some issues here. I don't like this. And she really cared about my business. And when she moved, I think I just wanted to cry when she moved. And but that's the kind of person you want to be your support if you aren't good at bookkeeping. If you have a propensity for bookkeeping and you can understand it, get yourself QuickBooks. Every time you write a check, write it out of QuickBooks. And then everything will be categorized. You don't have to spend 10 minutes figuring out what you spent for the year on electricity, what you spent on fabrics, what you spent on marketing. It's all going to be already categorized for you.
That's a great tip. I use QuickBooks. I don't use QuickBooks to write checks. I use it through my bank because they monitor it, but it'd be so much faster through QuickBooks. And my accountant tells me that all the time. If I will teach you the rest of this in 10 minutes, if you just take 10 minutes. So, Janet, we're going to take 10 minutes. I'm going to learn how to do that. All right. Do we have time, Janet? Do you have time for 2 more quick questions?
Absolutely. I know I've got a question from last night, too, that I wanted to answer.
Oh, sure. Well, go ahead. What's yours?
Somebody wrote us and said, would you please answer this question? They couldn't be on the forum, but they're going to watch it later on YouTube. And the question was that this person had taken both of our classes and had at times found themselves giving tips to other people online about, oh, I learned this at Angela Wolf's class, or Janet Prey says this. So the question was, how much of that can they continue to regurgitate before they step over the line? And I'm paraphrasing, but that's the way I understood the question. So my answer is, I love it if you tell somebody you learned something really slick from me. Mm-hmm. I don't mind that a bit. Where I will draw the line, and this has actually happened to me, I walked into an event after teaching a class to somebody, And there they were teaching my class, and they had photocopied my handouts. And this was 3 weeks later. Now, that's where I draw the line. That's my intellectual property. It took me 6 years to develop that class, as I told that woman. And you don't have a right to just take it and go make a profit off of it. And I don't want you taking it and giving it away.
Oh, I agree.
If you want to say, boy, I learned this really slick tip about how to sew without pins from Janet Prey, and then you send them off to my website or my Craftsy class, hey, thank you very much. I'm very happy. So 1 or 2 tips here and there, no, I don't mind that at all. How about you?
I agree as well. I think, though, if you take that was a perfect example. That would be mortifying.
Yes.
That would be like the confrontation that I don't enjoy, because I am a people pleaser, but that one would push me to the envelope, because my husband one day said, I cannot believe the amount of hours you put in pre-class as far as coming up with materials, testing the materials, writing the directions, coming up with kits. So, because one day he said, I don't think you make enough money. And I said, why is that? And he said, do you see how many hours you put in beforehand? And I said, I know. Are we back to the whole conversation?
It's weeks. Our Craftsy class, it takes us weeks to prepare all the step outs, all the samples, and just to hone down exactly what order to teach it in.
Well, and for Craftsy is a good example. In 2.5 days, you taped 7 to, I always got a little carried away, 10 lessons.
Yeah.
And if you screwed up and you didn't bring enough step outs, or all of a sudden the machine isn't working and you don't have extras of something, you're in trouble, because you'll put the entire staff behind schedule. It's not just about you. It's about all the camera people, all of the people that are on set. It's a big deal. So you can't just do that. If you're teaching in a class and you don't come prepared, I mean, you can cover up a few minor things, like maybe machines don't work. That's out of your realm, right?
Yeah.
But if you show up and you're making a bag and you're missing the zippers, that could be a problem, I mean, so each detail is so important. That was a good question from that lady, though.
Yeah.
So, okay, we got just 2 more here. Let's see. Marilyn, she saw that question. She's thanking you for answering that. When you are busy, as you ladies are, do you have a chance to sew just for pleasure? Now, Anita, that's the question of the day. I'm going to say, actually, I do. Every once in a while, like once a month, I might take a Saturday or take a day during the week after I've been traveling nonstop and say, today's my day. And I turn the phones off. I turn the music full blast. I come down here in my yoga outfit and that sounds better than sweatpants. And I sew for myself all day. Now, does that happen very often? Maybe 4 times a year. How about you, Janet?
I do sew for myself, and I make things, but they're usually the samples that we made to get the pattern completed. But my true pleasure is I have 2 granddaughters, and now I have 3 grandsons. The one's not big enough to sew for yet. I don't sew for them until they're probably at least walking. But so right now I'm making 2 little girls' dresses, because my granddaughter gets a birthday dress every year, and her birthday's coming up at the end of the month. And she has a very specific color range, blue. And I did get away with a peach dress once, but she was only 3 then. So now she's 5, and I adore that. I can be creative. I can have lots of fun. They're small projects, so I can get them done pretty quickly. So that's what I do for fun.
I saw a dress that you made for your granddaughter. I think it was 2 years ago. It was the cutest thing. Well, they're all cute, but it was so cute. And she loved it. You could tell by the look of her face.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
I forgot about samples. You're right about the samples. That is, when I do the samples, I do those in my size. And that's why I'm having a jean sew along coming up, because I have all my jeans are either out at a show or packed for a show. Yeah. I need some clothes. So did you ever do this? I tried one time to say everything in my closet I would sew. And
I never did that.
My wardrobe was so limited. Finally, I said, forget it. I'll just add a few pieces. Now I try to make everything.
When I was in high school, I made everything, because I had I had a limited budget, except for fabric. I had an unlimited budget. And I went to school in an affluent at an affluent high school. So a lot of the girls that I went to school with, I kid you not, I never saw them in the same outfit twice. And so for me, I had this limited budget, which I bought shoes and purses with, and then my fabric was free. So then I made up my whole ensemble, and I'd make them all mix and match and everything. And that was great because I didn't have a job. I was in high school, and it was my passion. I can't quite do that now. I mix and match between my stuff and Chico's. And
they travel well. That's a big thing with us.
Yeah.
All right. So there was one, Teresa wrote this question a few minutes ago, and I thought it was real good. So we're going to answer two more just really quickly, and then you'll be able to find us on Facebook. You can always gather Janet. We're going to leave a link to her Facebook page. I'm going to do a full blog post so you can have links to all of Janet's items, her craftsy classes, all these things. And you can log back in here and read any of the questions, watch the video, and it'll also be on YouTube later on. So for everyone that joined us. Teresa wants to know, she wanted to start up an online shop, and this is a great question. Should I make one-off garments and hope the right size person buys it sometime soon, or should I make several sizes in the hope that people want it and like it? How do I know what will make a profit? Well, that's a huge question, so we're going to answer a minute amount of it, Teresa. Would you make one item in your size and have it there that they could buy one in their size? I mean, if you make a whole bunch of sizes, I did that once, and I am still stuck with 2 of them, and it's been years.
Yeah.
What would you say?
I would make it up in a pleasing size, something that fit on a dress form nice, looked nice, and then offer it in a certain size range. And offer it in the size range that you know you can grade to, or if you're buying patterns that you can purchase a pattern graded to that size. I would be very careful in the designs I chose to do that with. I would want to choose things like easy fit. So things maybe knits or something like that, or simple wrap skirts or easy caftan type of dresses or something, because you're going to have a heck of a time when they get it and it doesn't fit them. Then they're going to want to send it back, they want their money back, or they're going to want you to fit it. And that is really hard to do mail order. So consider the style of what you're going to put up there is going to be like something you can do small, medium, and large in, or something that's going to fit a range of people rather than be and right now, a lot of clothes are very close fitting. So I think knits are a really good option for that.
Mm-hmm. Knits is a great option, and they're not that expensive. There were a few people that wanted to know that question. As far as the profit's concerned, you really won't know until you start designing. I mean, there's nothing, as long as you're charging enough you really have to test it. I mean, when I first started my apparel business, I just had a fashion show, and I had myself and 2 girls. We just walked through, we rented a restaurant, gave free wine, that gets ladies there very easily. And we invited everyone we knew and asked them to bring a friend. And it was just a restaurant on a night that wasn't busy, like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And it was a very casual fashion show. I had 16 outfits that were not even coordinated at all. I just loved them all. So it wasn't like, I wouldn't have gone down in the books of that was a great collection. It was more of a collection. But you know what? I sold almost every piece, and I sold pieces in different sizes. And that's a good way to do it. If it's in your size, host little luncheons and get your friends to model. My friends loved modeling. They did a great job too.
Yeah.
And that's how I sold a lot of my ready-to-wear garments.
Well, my ready-to-wear garments were like very simple, like I was saying, easy fit. They were wool melt and coats and capes and things like that. And then when I wanted to bring a new thing a new item into the line, I would make between 1 and 3 of it only. And then I would test the market. And if I sold all 3 of them, I'll go home and start production on it. If I didn't sell all 3 of them in a certain amount of time, then I'm never making another one. I'm going to have to mark these down to get rid of them. But if I'm not making at least my 4 times rate that I talked about earlier, and I forgot to add one more thing, 4 times or whatever the market will bear above that. So there were items where I made 8 times. And that's okay, because you have a lot of loss in your business. I know some new entrepreneurs are afraid that they don't want to overcharge. It wouldn't be right. Well, here's what the deal is. If somebody's willing to pay it, you're not overcharging for it. If you walked into I don't know who carried Kanye West line from last year with all the rips and the shredded, and he's charging $1,000 for a sweater that's got holes in it, but people are paying for it. It might not be that value to you, but it's that value to somebody else. So don't, test it out and see. You might be surprised at what people find cost effective that you would think is overpriced.
And that's a really good thing to test it. By the way, Anita had said to you, thanks for answering her question about sewing, because she says 90% of her pleasure sewing is for her grandchildren or for gifts. So that's very cool, Anita. And then here's another one, though, that has to go with your grandchild. Linda, oh, I'm so sorry. She says, how would you feel if you sewed something for your grandchild and you sent it and then found out your daughter gave it to someone else for a gift? I don't even feel like making anything for them now. Oh, I feel...
I know how to fix that. I know how to fix that.
Okay, what is it?
Well, one of the things I've seen, and I monitor a lot of sewing groups on Facebook, and I hear this story, so you're not alone. Either that or the kid won't wear it. And they're very disappointed. And I well imagine the mother's going, just put it on one time for grandma, right? So the children have to like it. You're not going to get a 5-year-old to put on. I can remember being gifted a dress somebody made when I was 5, and I hated that dress. And I only wore it once or twice because they forced me to. So it was green, and I don't like green. I didn't like green as clothing then, and I don't wear green as clothing my whole life. So it was just the color, but I was 5. So like with my granddaughter, blue, grandma, I like blue. So I asked her find out what their favorite cartoon characters are. Mine loves Paw Patrol. If I get her anything with Paw Patrol, that makes her day. So it isn't all about what you think is cute and what you think is pretty or what you want to make. You've got to step back a little bit, and not only what you want to make, but what the child will like and want to wear. So engage the child. And we've got Skype, we've got cell phones, we've got FaceTime. Talk to them and let them be invested in it. I've even taken them to the fabric store or shown them a picture on my phone from the store and go, which one of these do you like? When they get to have some input, they're going to be really excited when that shows up, and they're going to wear it, and mom's not giving it away.
And Linda said it was a quilt. That's worse, because that takes forever.
Worse. Because
no, that's really bad.
Yeah. Okay. Was that a daughter-in-law or a daughter?
She said daughter, but she's daughter-in-law now.
Hey, Angie,
all right. Well, Janet,
I want to mention one more thing, or I'm going to be fired from my job.
Well, before you do, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Before I forget. Because there's questions rolling in, but we'll have to get to those another time because our hour is getting close. But I want to talk about the American Sewing Expo. And you have a new event now. Could you please tell us 2 things? One, we were talking back to the entrepreneur side of business. We have to make choices in life that are not always the best. Nobody knows what goes on behind the scenes, right?
Right.
So you can't tell me what happened to the Sewing Expo.
Well, American Sewing Expo went on for 23 years, and we were one of the biggest expos in the country, and we were the only one who focused on fashion sewing. But as time went by and the internet became a shopping place and more people were ready to shop on the internet, Craftsy came along, there's more classes on the internet, we started to lose that oomph, that excitement, that gotta be there kind of attitude from our customers. So the jury's still out whether we'll ever do another expo like that. But this year we're doing a retreat, and the retreat is called Social, and it's basically, and it's spelled SEWCIAL.
I'm going to type it down below. I absolutely love that name. I don't know where you came up with it, but I love it.
And so what it is that when you come to Social, it's 3 days. And you'll have an exciting opportunity to shop at one of the better fabric stores in the country. And it's a little field trip we go on, and they give us wine, and they give us a nice lunch. And then we have an opening reception, and we have an optional gift exchange the first night, which is a icebreaker, which is lots of fun. If you register for the event, you'll learn more about that. And then you'll get to take 4 classes over the 2 days. And during this whole event, you're going to have catered meals, beautiful buffets of very nice, high quality foods with lots of options. So you're pampered the whole time. We have a party on the Friday night event and prizes and all kinds of support from the industry. So there's sewing machines and irons, all kinds of things being given away. But these 4 teachers I've handpicked. Now, of course, I'm one of them. But we're bringing in Lorraine Henry, who is my favorite teacher in the country. And I've met them all, I think, in 30 years, that teaches pattern alteration and fitting. And she
that's going to be good.
It is. And she makes it so clear and clean and easy. And she's got just a sweet sense of humor. You will love Lorraine. And you can't get her online. She doesn't do online classes. So the only place you can see Lorraine is in person. And then Gail Yellen's coming. And she's going to be teaching serger and cover stitch class. So you'll get to take her class, and she's fabulous.
I love Gail. She is so creative. I love everything she comes up with.
And one of the nicest people you ever want to meet. And then for a fun little project, one of your classes will be a machine embroidery class. Now, this class isn't meant to teach you machine embroidery, so don't get worried if you don't want to embroider, you don't have an embroidery machine. This is just for the fun of it. And it's taught by Sue O'Berry, who has just a really cute line of embroideries, and many of them that relate to the sewing projects. You're gonna make embroider a pashmina, a pre-made pashmina in that class, and a little coin purse. So you're gonna go home with 2 finished items out of that class. And then
I love her stuff. Sue's actually coming on the show in a few weeks.
Oh,
for Entrepreneur Insight. Oh, but her things are so cute. Yes. What a great class. Okay, now what's your class?
My class will be, of course, more about industrial sewing, but I'm trying to mix it up so those people who've taken my Craftsy classes or have taken other classes from me in person will get something new. So I'm going to be talking about industrial feet versus home sewing machine feet and showing some of that. And we'll be actually sewing a small project. And gee, I don't know what I'll throw a bunch of stuff in there though, but, and I'll leave time for people to say, well, how do you do this? Or can you show me that? And I'll be there for you for that as well.
If there's one thing I know about you, Janet, and that is you are so full of information that her and I could sit for, I don't know, days. If they ever had a sewing cruise and they put us on it, we'd be in trouble if we were teachers, because we would never get out of the room having a glass of wine talking, because we have so much to share.
Yes, absolutely. Well, when you've been around a little while, you do have that. And I remember when my aunt first asked me to start teaching, I was afraid to teach. I was like, I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. I'm afraid somebody's going to stump me. Well, after a few years, I thought, well, I'll give it a try. Well, at that point, even if I didn't know the answer, I wasn't embarrassed because I knew enough of the answers. If there was a question they asked I didn't know the answer to, I knew who to send them to. I said, oh, you need to talk to Angela Wolf. She knows all about the movie, or whatever it might be. So, yeah.
Hey, Janet, you have a few people that are just asking a couple quick questions about social. Marilyn. Oh, nice to see you, Marilyn. Social. Will machines be provided?
Baby lock machines will be provided in all the classes. Kits are going to be part of the class as well. So anyone traveling will just need to bring their suitcase full of their own personal needs, as well as basic sewing supplies, which would be, measuring tape. In my class, not pins, but maybe one of the other classes, they might want you to have pins. Will not be on the sewing machine. You'll be actually working with patterns and learning to fit yourself. So you'll go home with some really good information about how to finally adjust that pattern before you cut it out so that it fits your shoulders or your butt or your breast or whatever your issues might be. I have many.
Well, don't bring those scissors on the airplane, though. Put them in your bag. Don't carry them on. They will take them away. Yep. So I've had that and screwdrivers. They don't like either. They'll let you get by with the mace, though. No, I'm sure that was an accident.
Well, and we have a Facebook page, social, or you can go to my Islander Sewing Facebook page and ask any questions you like about social, and we'll make sure to get the answers to you.
And Janet, when we're all finished here, you can log back in later. Will you leave them links here? Because I'll do it on a blog post as well, but leave them links to all this.
Sure.
A couple more questions about that show. They're saying Gail's awesome. And when is it this year? It's, well,
September 22nd.
The last weekend in September.
We had hoped to have Angie there, and we had a scheduling miscommunication. So that's why we're laughing, because we were disappointed not to have Angie, but next time. And
Yes.
But it's the weekend of September 22nd. So it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And it's at a convention center that is a part of a hotel. So once you get there, everything is taken care of for you. They've got a nice pool and a hot tub for the evenings if you like. We even provide you with a few little things to have in the room, like face masks and stuff. We just find it real fun. But there's lots of good learning too. But in between the learning is good food and lots of games and activities as well.
If you do it next year at that time, I will save that date.
I got you down for that date, Angie. Can I get that in writing?
The last weekend, the last full weekend in September.
Yeah.
That's where I screwed up.
All right.
Oh gosh. I'm gonna miss everyone so much. Marcia, there's a bunch of questions that you guys can ask them about this. It's in Novi, Michigan. Does the price include the hotel?
No.
No. Okay. And I'm sure there's options that you can find on their website. And there was one more question about, this was a good one from Sherry. Is social for very experienced sewers, or can anyone benefit?
Anyone can benefit. It's particularly say like with my class. A lot of people have been sewing for 40 years, but they've never sewed the production method or the industrial method. So they're going to learn. The embroidery class, I think you're going to learn a little bit, but you're going to have a lot of fun. Sue is an embroidery expert, for those who already embroider and want some tips, you'll get that. But if you just want to go and have fun, that'll be cool too.
Oh, it's such any sewing event, any of them. I know yours is going to be good because you have good taste, but any sewing event, you meet so many fellow people, like men and women that sew, and you're friends forever then. So I think that's one of the coolest part. I run into some of these people, which is why I'll miss the American Sewing Expo. I had a group of ladies that I'd see every single year, and it was like I just saw them yesterday. So hopefully I'll see them at social next year.
We've had 2 socials already, and people have become friends and stayed friends.
I see you have a few groupies on here. Karen Forbes said she's been there. It was absolutely fantastic. She still refers to handouts from Gail. There were a couple other people up there that said it was absolutely phenomenal. So Debbie said she went. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining. Janet, I can't thank you enough. You are an inspiration to me. You've been a mentor, and you're the reason I'm in the sewing industry, kind of.
A little bit.
You gave me a couple of opportunities that I took. You introduced me to the producer of It's So Easy TV. I would have never met Kathy.
Yeah.
Now, it worked out.
Yeah, but it was you, Angie. She said, I'm looking for somebody that can do that show. And it was immediately, I knew you had the personality for it, and you had the skills for it. Not everybody can be on TV, as you and I know from being at Craftsy. And they'll have some instructors come and they put the camera on and they just freeze.
It's this.
Yeah.
Wait, where are your glasses, Janet? That's what they need, your glasses. There we go. Those will be the new glasses. So, thank you so much for joining, Janet. Thank you. We'll give you links. You can join us. I'm sure we're going to do this again. Janet has so much more to share, but thank you for spending the hour with us. Thanks for hanging in there with a few technical difficulties. And Janet, thank you. Good luck in your business. Of course, we'll be talking. Do you have any new patterns coming out that we need to know about?
Well, I do, but I've got, you'll see, sign up for my newsletter. It's free. You can get it off of islandersewing.com. Just sign up for it. And when new products come out, I almost always put them on sale when I introduce them. So you'll know when the new ones are out, and you'll get a chance to get the best price.
So you have islandersewing.com, angelawolf.com. You know how to find both of us. We're always around. I just think this is awesome. So thank you for being here, Janet. I love you dearly. You're a great entrepreneur, and I think I'm watching these comments roll in. They've loved the information you've given. So thank you. And don't forget, you can watch us again on YouTube.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.